So I'm currently on my way to a very special place about 6,000 kilometers away from here, just because I saw this one very specific image while surfing the internet. Surfing the internet, that's very 2000s of me. Now at first it may seem as to why the big fuss? Why go through traveling 6,000 kilometers for seeing a New York Police Department car? Is this a very special model of the car? What's happening over here? Well, the answer is right there. Because if you see a little closer into this image and beyond the New York Police Department car, you'll see that it's not in New York at all. This very specific image of the New York Police Department car is on a roadway in Singapore City, Singapore. And that is why we're going to go to... Give me a moment. We're going to go... And that's why we are traveling to... So today we have come to Singapore to understand why this thing over here has any sort of jurisdiction in this place, and this place, and this place as well. Let's figure it out. Right, so I have some more details because NYPD is not just in New York or London or Singapore, it's in 16 countries. A local police department is in 16 different countries. Now I know that US has a history of being in places where they're not really supposed to be, but this is even bizarre by those standards. I have so many questions on how this jurisdiction works, why this jurisdiction works, and why does NYPD need to be in these places in the first place? So I went to their website to figure out what on earth is happening over here, and I found one of the most American videos that I have seen in recent times.
The International Liaison Program is critical, and the Police Foundation pays for almost its entirety. That means there's an NYPD detective sitting in the police department in Abu Dhabi, in Jordan, in Tel Aviv. We need to know right away, how does that affect New York?
Okay, let's actually talk about some real information. So the New York Police Department has an intelligence bureau, a specialized division of the NYPD focused on preventing terrorism and addressing organized and transnational crime. Within the International Bureau, we have domestic intelligence units who focus on activities within the United States, and then we have the International Liaison Program, or the ILP. Now, of course, there are other departments of the New York Police Department which very well talk to each other. But for this video, we're going to focus on this, the International Liaison Program, or the ILP, which started because of the very tragic events of September 11, 2001.
A huge explosion now raining debris on all of us.
So during and after 9/11, the delays in information sharing, the intelligence sharing between the local police officers and the federal government was highlighted to be as one of the reasons for this event to have occurred. It became very clear that local police departments like the NYPD need to augment their prowess in order to deal with such situations and prevent them in the future. One of the ways they could augment their prowess was by stationing officers abroad. With this, the New York Police Department aimed at gaining first-hand intelligence on terrorism and criminal activities before they impact New York City. So the New York Police Department established the International Liaison Program in 2003 with these objectives. First is global intelligence gathering. The objective is to obtain real-time information on international threats such as terrorism and transnational crime that could impact New York City. Then we have collaboration with international law enforcement. The idea is to foster relationships and enhance information sharing with foreign law enforcement agencies. Another objective is to build an early warning system by monitoring global incidents and relaying critical intelligence to New York City for proactive security measures. Now, since this is an international collaborative effort, you also get to learn and adopt a lot of best practices. For example, you can learn and incorporate effective strategies from global counterparts to strengthen New York Police Department's counterterrorism and crime prevention efforts. Let's take the example of Paris terrorist attacks. Because of the fact that NYPD had an ILP officer over there and monitor the situation firsthand, they were able to communicate and give notes in real time, and they were also able to conduct a counterterrorism exercise mimicking the Paris terrorist attacks. And all of this is done to enhance security of New York City, as it is deemed to be a major target for terrorism and international crime. Now, all of these great objectives, keep your city safe. But how do you put this in practice? The problem is international relations is a very complex topic. And when you involve international jurisdiction within it, because different countries have different laws, it gets even more complicated. So to be able to execute this international liaison program, NYPD needed to talk a lot with other countries so that they can allow their NYPD officials into their system. So to achieve this, the New York Police Department needed to form foreign collaborations based on mutually agreed jurisdiction frameworks, and this is how it works. Let's look at the diplomatic framework first, with Singapore as a sample case. There needs to be a sense of mutual understanding. The New York Police Department and the host country's law enforcement agencies, such as the Singapore Police Force, enter into an understanding, such as through MLATs or MOUs, that outline the roles, responsibilities and limitations that NYPD officers stationed in the city will have. These agreements ensure that NYPD officers operate within the legal frameworks of the host country and respects its sovereignty. Now, the primary function of New York police officers in Singapore is to act as liaisons, facilitating the exchange of information related to counterterrorism and transnational crime. They do not possess law enforcement authority in Singapore and do not engage in active policing or investigative activities. So it's not like the NYPD is gonna start policing around in Singapore looking for criminals that they think might be connected to a crime in New York City. There is a system in place. But let's end the discussion about the diplomatic framework by talking about the funding for this program. The International Liaison Program is funded by the New York City Police Foundation, which covers the living and travel expenses of the officers. This funding model ensures that the program operates without imposing financial burdens on the host country. We'll talk about this funding and the financial burden later in the video because taxes are a thing. But for now, this is how the ILP executes itself diplomatically. Now, I understand New York City is one of the great modern capitals of the world, and given the history of what has happened there, I understand the need of gathering intelligence to prevent such things from happening ever again. But, and this is an important but, because this is where it all gets to be so bizarre. What the New York Police Department seeks to achieve through the ILP in a way already exists. And not just for NYPD, but for a hell of a lot more police departments across the globe. It's the International Criminal Police Organization, or INTERPOL. And it's massive in scale, with much stronger ties to 196 member countries, including the NYPD. In fact, one of the very objectives of INTERPOL is to enable this collaboration between different countries' police departments. Does that sound familiar at all? So I can't seem to wrap my head around as to why the New York Police Department needs a program like ILP when there's an INTERPOL in place. So we thought we could perhaps go through one of the marquee cases of ILP in their history to understand and try and make sense of what's happening and if we need ILP in the first place. Okay, pause, because I want to talk about this video's sponsors, NordVPN. We are currently in Sydney, Australia, working on a video that you'll probably see in the next few months. But we've been able to make such videos for the past few months because of our sponsors like NordVPN. Now, if you happen to travel like we have been in the past few months, you will be very reliant on public Wi-Fis, which are not really the most secure forms of connection. So, in order to keep your devices secure, I would suggest that, like us, you do use NordVPN. It lets you browse the net securely when you're traveling and connected to public Wi-Fis, and it also helps you watch all the geolocked movies that you've been missing while you've been traveling. And if you use a special link, which is right over here and in the description box down below, you'll get a special offer for the holidays wherein you can get about 75% off and up to 4 months free. So I would highly suggest that you take up NordVPN when we're traveling for the next time. And now we go back to the video. This is the case of James Curry.
James Curry was let off a plane at JFK. He was escorted by NYPD intelligence sergeant.
James Curry was wanted by the New York City Police Department for the death of his infant child on August 5th, 2018. This report from the New York Times states that the boy's mother, Julia Saldana, had given Mason to his father on Saturday afternoon for a 2-day visit under a custody agreement, But Mr. Curry never dropped the 7-month-old off at his daycare center. At the New York Police Headquarters, the International Bureau, working alongside US Immigration and Customs Enforcement, uncovered crucial details about Mr. Curry's escape. Customs and Border Protection confirmed that Curry was on a flight to Bangkok with a stopover in Abu Dhabi. Lieutenant John Meadrick, head of NYPD's International Liaison Program at the time, quickly reached out to an ILP detective stationed in Abu Dhabi, who rushed to the airport to intercept Curry at the gate, but Curry had already boarded an earlier flight heading straight for Thailand. With time ticking, the lieutenant then called Sergeant Lee in Singapore despite the midnight hour and instructed him to catch the next flight to Bangkok. By 5 a.m, Thai authorities had detained Curry as he disembarked in Bangkok. The Royal Thai Police secured him awaiting further instructions, and just 3 hours later, Sergeant Lee from Singapore arrived in Bangkok. He then conducted an interview with Curry, ensuring the case moved forward seamlessly. And on 10th of August, Curry was escorted back to New York, where he stood before a judge in Manhattan Criminal Court and faced charges for concealing a corpse, perhaps all thanks to the NYPD's International Liaison Program. When James Curry saw Sergeant Lee few hours after he was detained, the first words that came out of his mouth were, "How did you get here so fast?" And this is exactly the reason why this case is a marquee case of the ILP, because it highlights the two most important factors that enables justification of ILP in the first place, and that is time and international collaboration. I don't know why I did that, okay. But in our report, we deliberately hid a very important factor in play. If we go back to this map, the NYPD does not have a liaison officer in Bangkok, Thailand. Hence the urgent call to Sergeant Lee to leave for Thailand from Singapore. So the question remains, how and who orchestrated this extraction? Who's the missing player here? The secret US government agency that we don't know of, it's the Interpol. They issued an international alert asking police worldwide for assistance in looking for Curry. The Thai government acted swiftly because of the blue notice and not necessarily because of the ILP. Well, to be fair, that's a bit questionable, because it was the ILP's lieutenant who contacted the headquarters of Interpol in Lyon, France to request for an urgent blue notice for James Curry. So they did that. Okay, but jokes apart, the case resolved quickly because of the swift action taken by the ILP in collaboration with the Interpol and the other local governments in Thai and Abu Dhabi. In Thailand and Abu Dhabi, not Thai and Abu Dhabi. I'm hungry. I have reduced the nation to a cuisine. But at the same time, I also feel that this is exactly what the Interpol was made for enabling this collaboration between different parties. And at the cost of repeating myself, which I feel rather amused saying it out loud, I think New York police is kind of repeating itself as well by mimicking Interpol in a much weaker way with very fewer collaborations. It has 196 member countries, you have 16. How is this? Another question that crossed my mind was the funding for this. As we briefly talked earlier in the video, the ILP is funded by the New York City Police Foundation. The curious thing here is that this fund isn't really funded by taxpayers' money, so it's a privately funded foundation. And I don't know how you want to look at it, but the sound of having a privately funded police is not exactly music to the ears, is it? But earlier this year, NYPD decided that it will close its quarters in Singapore and in Canada, but perhaps not for the reasons that you would have thought of. So all the theatrics that you saw earlier in the video were just party tricks, and unfortunately this is just a very regular police headquarters situated in the lovely Singapore city. Now hopefully by the tone of this video you perhaps would have realized that this is more of a thought exercise rather than a very constructive criticism on the New York Police Department International Liaison Program. Now try saying that for 15 more times like I did in this video. But I digress. So I personally feel that it's not very responsible of me to conclude that because of tax problems a few places closed and that has started a movement against the existence of ILP. That's not the case. Newer International Liaison Program members are being officiated as we talk about it. But here's what I really wanted to highlight by this very immature rant. International relations is a very complicated problem. It takes a lot of resources, not just monetary, but even otherwise. So we really have to ponder about the existence of such task force whose existence might not really be necessary. Or maybe it does, and I'm just a very stupid person talking on the internet. Which perhaps am. So as we stand here at Sydney's police headquarters, where another one of ILP's officers is working, I leave this video feeling as much justified about the existence of ILP as I did before studying it. But in any case, I would say thank you for watching, and I'll see you in a few days.